Life is full of wounds. Some are small, some cut deep, and some feel impossible to heal. Maybe someone has hurt you in a way that changed your life forever. Maybe you've been carrying a weight that no one else can see, and no matter how hard you try, you just can't forget. But here's the truth. Unforgiveness doesn't imprison the other person. It imprisons you. Jesus calls us to forgive not because the hurt didn't matter, but because you matter too much to keep carrying it. Forgiveness is not saying what happened was okay. It's saying, I refuse to let it control my heart any longer. Today, I want to walk with you through the power of God's grace. The kind of grace that sets you free. Together, we'll learn how to release the past, embrace healing, and step into the future that God has for you. Unforgiveness is a prison, not for the person who hurt you, but for you. When we hold on to resentment, bitterness, and anger, we often think we are keeping the other person accountable for what they've done. We believe that by refusing to forgive, we are somehow maintaining control or protecting ourselves from further harm. But the reality is quite the opposite. The only person who suffers under the weight of unforgiveness is the one who refuses to let go. Think about it. When you hold on to past wounds, replaying the offense over and over in your mind, who is truly affected? The person who hurt you may not even be thinking about it anymore. They may have moved on, unaware of the pain they caused, or indifferent to the burden you carry. Meanwhile, you are trapped in a cycle of pain, reliving the hurt every single day. It keeps you chained to an event, a person, or a season of your life that no longer exists, preventing you from stepping fully into the life God has for you. Unforgiveness is like carrying a heavy weight on your back. At first, you may think you can handle it, that you are strong enough to bear it, but over time, that weight begins to wear you down. It affects your heart, your mind, and even your physical well-being. Studies have shown that holding on to resentment can increase stress, raise blood pressure, and contribute to anxiety and depression. It poisons your relationships, making it difficult to trust others or open your heart to love again. Jesus knew the power of forgiveness, which is why he spoke about it so often. In Matthew 18:21-22, Peter asked Jesus how many times he should forgive someone who sins against him. Up to 7 times, he suggested. But Jesus answered, not 7 times, but 77 times. In other words, forgiveness is not about keeping score. It's about keeping your heart free. Jesus wasn't saying that what was done to you doesn't matter. He wasn't minimizing your pain, but he knew that unforgiveness would do more damage to you than the original offense ever could. Forgiveness is not about excusing or justifying what happened. It doesn't mean you have to forget, trust again, or even have a relationship with the person who hurt you. It simply means you are choosing to release the grip that pain has on your heart. It is not about them, it's about you. When you forgive, you are breaking free from the chains of anger and resentment. You are choosing to no longer let that pain define you. True freedom is found when you let go, not because the other person deserves it, but because you deserve peace. Forgiveness is not a feeling, it's a choice. And every time you choose it, you are choosing to step into the life of healing, joy, and purpose that God has planned for you. Forgiveness is not forgetting. It is choosing to release the pain even when you remember. Many people struggle with the idea of forgiveness because they believe it means pretending the hurt never happened. They think it requires erasing the memory of betrayal, abuse, or deep wounds. But the truth is, some wounds are too deep to forget, and God never asks us to ignore reality. Instead, He calls us to a higher way of living, one where we acknowledge the pain but refuse to be controlled by it. When we hold on to the idea that forgiveness equals forgetting, we set ourselves up for failure. Memories don't just disappear, and emotions don't simply fade because we want them to. But forgiveness is not about denying the hurt. It's about releasing its hold on our hearts. It's about choosing peace over bitterness and freedom over bondage. Every time that painful memory surfaces, you have a choice. Dwell on it. Let it reopen wounds and allow resentment to take root, or surrender it to God, reminding yourself that you are no longer a prisoner to that pain. Jesus demonstrated this kind of forgiveness on the cross. As he hung there suffering the ultimate betrayal and injustice, he didn't ignore the pain. He felt it fully. Yet, instead of clinging to bitterness, he said, "Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they are doing." Luke 23:34. Jesus did not forget what was done to him, but he chose forgiveness as an act of love and surrender to God's greater plan. Forgiveness is not about pretending everything is fine or allowing harmful people back into your life. It is about setting yourself free. It is choosing to no longer let past wounds define you. You may still remember what happened, but by forgiving, you are choosing to break the chains of resentment and step into healing. God's grace empowers you to forgive even when it feels impossible. On our own, forgiveness can seem out of reach, especially when the hurt runs deep. We tell ourselves we don't have the strength to let go, that the pain is too great, or that the person who hurt us doesn't deserve forgiveness. But forgiveness is not about human effort alone. It is a supernatural act of surrender made possible through God's grace. Grace is the undeserved favor of God, the same grace that forgave us when we least deserved it. Romans 5:8 reminds us, "But God demonstrates his own love for us in this: while we were still sinners, Christ died for us." If God extended his grace to us despite our failures, he also gives us the strength to extend it to others. Forgiving doesn't mean we excuse the wrong or say it didn't matter. It means we choose to hand it over to God, trusting him to heal our hearts and bring justice in his perfect way. When you rely on your own strength, forgiveness feels like a mountain too high to climb. But when you lean on God's grace, he lifts the burden. He softens hardened hearts, mends brokenness, and gives peace where there was once pain. Forgiveness is not about mustering up enough willpower. It is about allowing God to work through you. His grace is enough, even when your strength is not. Healing begins when you let go. As long as you hold on to resentment, pain, and bitterness, you keep yourself tied to the very thing that wounded you. Many people believe that holding on to their hurt protects them from being hurt again, but in reality, it only deepens the wounds. Refusing to forgive doesn't punish the other person, it punishes you. It keeps your heart in a constant state of unrest, replaying the offense, feeding the anger, and preventing you from moving forward. Letting go doesn't mean the pain disappears overnight. It doesn't mean you forget what happened or that the scars vanish. It means you are making a conscious decision to release the weight of that pain so it no longer defines you. When you let go, you make space for healing, for peace, and for God to restore what was broken. You stop allowing the past to control your emotions and decisions. Jesus invites us to release our burdens to him. In Matthew 11:28, he says, "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest." The burden of unforgiveness is heavy, but God never intended for you to carry it alone. When you surrender it to him, you step into healing, you step into freedom, and only when you let go can you truly experience the peace and restoration that God has in store for you. Forgiveness is a process, not a one-time event. Many people expect that once they decide to forgive, the pain will instantly disappear and they will never struggle with those emotions again. But forgiveness doesn't always happen in a single moment. It is often a journey requiring daily surrender and intentional choices. There will be days when the hurt resurfaces, when anger creeps back in, and when you are tempted to hold on to bitterness again. That doesn't mean you haven't forgiven. It simply means you are still healing. Just as a physical wound takes time to mend, emotional wounds also require time and care. Every time you choose to forgive, you take another step toward healing. Jesus taught that we should forgive not just once, but over and over again. In Matthew 18:22, he tells Peter to forgive 70 times 7, illustrating that forgiveness is an ongoing practice, not a single act. Each time the pain tries to take hold, you have the choice to reaffirm your forgiveness, to release the hurt again, and to trust God with the outcome. The process may not be easy, but every step brings you closer to true freedom. With each act of forgiveness, your heart becomes lighter, your peace grows stronger, and your wounds begin to heal. Over time, what once seemed impossible becomes a testimony of God's grace at work in your life. Freedom is found in faith. When you choose to forgive, you are not just releasing the other person, you are stepping into the life God has for you. Holding on to bitterness keeps you trapped in the past, but faith allows you to move forward, trusting that God will bring justice, healing, and restoration in His perfect way. Forgiveness requires faith because it means surrendering control. It means trusting that even if you never receive an apology, even if the situation is never made right in your eyes, God is still in control. He sees every wound, every injustice, and every tear you've shed, and He promises in Romans 12:19, "Vengeance is mine, I will repay, says the Lord." When you place your pain in God's hands, you are no longer bound by it. You are free to live in the peace and purpose He has designed for you. Faith reminds you that forgiveness is not about weakness. It is about strength. It is about choosing to trust God's plan over your pain. It is about believing that He can bring beauty from brokenness and that no wound is beyond His healing power. When you walk in faith, you walk in freedom. And in that freedom, you find the joy, peace, and restoration that only God can provide. Forgiveness is not easy, but it is necessary. It is not about forgetting the past, excusing the hurt, or pretending it didn't happen. It is about choosing freedom over bondage, peace over bitterness, and faith over fear. Unforgiveness keeps you trapped, but forgiveness sets you free. God never asks us to forgive in our own strength. His grace empowers us. He knows the pain you've carried, the wounds that still ache, and the memories that won't fade, but He also knows the healing that comes when you choose to release it. Forgiveness is a journey, a daily decision to let go and trust God with your heart. And when you do, you step into the life of peace and purpose that He has planned for you. So today I challenge you, don't let the weight of unforgiveness hold you back any longer. Choose to forgive, not because they deserve it, but because you deserve freedom. Trust God with your pain and watch how He turns it into something beautiful. The past may have shaped you, but it doesn't have to define you. It's time to let go. It's time to heal. It's time to walk in the freedom that forgiveness brings.